Take a sheet of thick A3 paper. This is a good size. Not too small to get lost in the details, and not too bulky to be inconvenient to work with. The density of the paper is important. It holds its shape, does not deform from the pressure of the pencil, and most importantly, allows you to correct mistakes with an eraser without traces and pellets. The HB2 pencil is my main tool. It is soft enough for the line to be expressive, but not too dark, so that it does not interfere with tracing or coloring later. Eraser, take a soft one, preferably white vinyl. It does not scratch the paper and carefully removes graphite. I always start with the most important thing, composition. I evaluate where the center of attention will be. I lightly outline the main lines, the horizon, the vertical, large masses. This helps to understand where the character will be, what scale he will have relative to the sheet. If I am drawing a person, first an oval, light, barely noticeable. The vertical axis is the spine, the basis of the entire pose. Horizontal lines, the level of the eyes, nose, mouth. It's like scaffolding for the future face. Body, shoulders, arms. I build from simple shapes, cylinders, rectangles, triangles. Everything is conditional for now, to understand how the body works, how it interacts with space. I erase the unnecessary, underline the necessary. Everything is built from simple to complex, from general to specific. An eraser in this process. It helps not only to remove mistakes, but also to highlight areas, clarify the silhouette, make the drawing cleaner. The main thing is not to press too hard so as not to damage the paper. As a result, we get a framework for the future work. Not the final drawing, but the basis on which you can then apply detailing, tracing, shadows, paint, whatever. A sketch is, in fact, the architecture of thought, the beginning of a journey. I start with the farthest plan, the fence. I take a medium brush, mix brown and ochre shades, create a lively wood texture. I skip a little water to achieve the effect of fibers. Then I take a semi-medium brush, add shadows between the boards. I use gray and dark brown. I try not to make the fence too distracting, but at the same time make it look alive. Now the background wall, brick. I fill the fragments with a warm reddish and ochre with a medium brush, varying the shades so that there is no monotony. Then, with a thin brush, I emphasize the seams between the bricks with a dark color. In places, I create unevenness and drips to add texture. I work with the figure carefully and consistently. First, the skin, a semi-medium brush, grayish and light beige with a cool undertone. I leave the eyes, lips, and hair untouched. Next, the whites of the eyes a little red in the pupils, pinkish for the lips. Now the clothes. I cover the black dress in 2 layers, with a medium-sized brush. First a little lighter, then thicken the tone. I leave light areas for the highlights on the shoulders and bends. The collar's gray, a little lighter than the main background. Hair, I draw dark braids carefully with a thin brush, slowly, especially on the bends. I add white partings on top. Detailing. Now I take a thin brush. It's time for details. I work on the eyes, add a shadow under the chin, emphasize the collar line. Highlights on the buttons, small facial features. I enliven the fence boards with strokes and veins. Outlining the figures, with black ink or acrylic for clarity, if you want to add graphics. Critical analysis of the work. This is a graphic composition made on thick A3 paper using watercolor, ink, and possibly acrylic. The work is clearly in the style of a Gothic illustration with visual references to a character from the classics. It could be Wednesday Addams or an image inspired by her. However, the author does not copy, but interprets, creating a gloomy, even grotesque atmosphere. Now, in detail by elements, overall impression and atmosphere. The strong point of the painting is its atmosphere. The red background and the hard fence in the foreground immediately set the viewer in an anxious, tense mood. This is not a cozy courtyard, but rather a psychological trap or a symbol of isolation. The character does not smile, does not express emotions, and this further enhances the feeling of alienation, isolation, detachment. In this regard, the atmosphere is a success. The painting seems to put a barrier between the viewer and the heroine. The fence works not just as a landscape element, but as a psychological device. We look, but cannot come closer. This solution works very expressively. Composition and structure. Compositionally, the work is built vertically, with a clear division into 3 zones: fence, character, background. This is a classic scheme and it works well. The central location of the figure makes it the center of attention, and the background and fence form a framing, as if the viewer is peeping through a crack. This creates the effect of a stage or a theatrical production. However, there is no linear perspective, and this flattens the image a little. This may be a deliberate stylistic device, but to add depth, it would be worth either working on the planarity of the wall or introducing shadow modulation on the fence and the figure. Now everything works in one plane, and some of the expressiveness is lost. Color scheme. The background is in warm red ochre tones, the figure is in black, white, and gray shades, the fence is in brown. This is the right decision. The color palette is limited, but it works to create contrast and mood. The red background intensifies anxiety, and the heroine's black outfit makes her stand out against this background. The accent on the red eyes looks especially good. This is the decisive touch, creating a sense of anomaly, foreignness, something otherworldly. What can be improved? Add gradations of shades within each element. For example, the fence is made almost monotonously, with minimal color transitions. Several additional tonal layers would give more volume and liveliness to the wood texture. The character's figure, the heroine's figure, is made stylized, in the spirit of a naive or deliberately primitive drawing, which, however, works for the character of the image. Pigtails, a strict collar, an elongated face. Everything is readable, but there are a few points for improvement. The arms and shoulders look too chopped off. It would be possible to work on the anatomy a little, not towards realism, but towards plasticity and expressiveness. The eyes are a strong detail, but the right one, from the viewer's point of view, is a little off. This disrupts the symmetry and causes unnecessary tension, unless this is an intentional technique. Details and technique. The work is done confidently. It is evident that the artist controls the materials. The lines are clear. The strokes are confident. 3 brushes are used for their purpose. A thin brush, details. A medium one, fills. This speaks of a well-thought-out technique. However, some transitions between colors could be softer. For example, in places on the face and background, a sharp contrast between the layers is visible. Perhaps it is worth blurring the boundaries more, or applying glaze layers, especially in the shoulder and neck area. Now it looks hard, although perhaps this emphasizes the doll-like nature of the character. Volume in the wall. The simplest chiaroscuro modeling, or brick texture. Shadows from the fence on the figure. This would enhance the spatiality. Soft transitions between light and shadow on the face. Remove or soften. Excessive rigidity in the shoulder contour. Too sharp an emphasis on the left for the viewer. Braid. It dominates, distracting from the face. Style and genre. The style can be defined as an interpretation at the junction of Gothic and naive drawing, with elements of graphic illustration. This approach is interesting, unconventional, especially if the picture is part of a series or a narrative. This work is not for the sake of realism, but for the sake of conveying the mood, and this is its value. Summary. The work is expressive, with character. There is a clear idea and image. A little refinement in terms of depth, chiaroscuro, and plasticity of form, and it will become a very strong illustration. The main thing is that the author's style and mood are felt. This is not a copy, not an imitation, but its own story, told through dark, almost theatrical visual poetry.